what masterminds are?
People that are masters in their minds.
Right. Yes, Polly, you got it. It's really, instead of having people to teach sessions, we thought it was going to be really easy and probably more, you gathered a whole lot more information if we had people that were practicing what the topic would be and doing it at a really high level, and then they're able to share what they've learned and what they do and what they don't learn, what they don't do, what hasn't worked for them, is often just as important as what has worked. So this has been working really well. We did shut it down for August and part of September, most of September, just because of everything, but it really kind of came out of COVID, and it's been great. I think the feedback's been really good in participation level on most things. But this is one of the really great sessions that that we're excited about. And it, I think we're going to be recording it, right, Erin?
Yep, it's recording.
Okay, perfect. So then whoever isn't able to can be able to come on and watch it as well. So you guys go ahead, and if somebody just wants to, maybe we'll give a couple, like maybe 2 minutes. I don't know. Do you want to do it that way, Erin? Like for each person, just to give a little bit of this is what works and doesn't work.
Mm-hmm.
So then everybody gets equal opportunity and equal chance to share, and then we can, if the way we've been running it is if anybody has a question during the time that someone's sharing, they just jump in and they just ask.
Yeah, it's meant to be super informal, more of a conversation.
Yeah, it's more of a conversation. You build on it and kind of move forward.
Exactly. And it's also a great way for agents to get to know each other, especially agents that maybe are newer to the office or to the brokerage, or are in areas that aren't right in HRM, because sometimes, especially during COVID, we have not been able to get together. So this is a great way.
Goatee, Mike.
What?
I said I like the goatee.
Okay.
I feel like Colonel Sanders, though.
Like I looked down, I'm like, is that Mike?
All right.
So I'd be willing to start, because I actually have a really great story as to, why it's so important that we know what we're looking at. And it's not only about our people spending money on an inspection. It's actually, in this current market that we're in, it's the chance of losing a deal by trying to renegotiate the contract at the post-inspection stage. And, that's really important. I don't know if everybody in here is aware. I see there's a lot of seasoned people on here, but any of the condition precedents like inspections, it states in there that if notice to the contrary is received, then either party is at liberty to terminate, which means that the seller can turf you and move on to a backup offer. They can take the information that you gave. They can go back to other buyers and say, hey, we found out that these doors are leaking, and, there could be some other damage as a result of it. So, are you guys willing to take it on at this price? And well, if they're willing to take it on at that price, well, now all of a sudden it's easier for the seller. Now they've bounced us out of there. And we have a very upset buyer who just spent a lot of money on inspections. So an example of, the importance of that too, Brenda Kay and I just are in the middle of a deal right now, and it was competing offers.
JJ, stop. Oh,
What?
sorry. I'll mute.
So, when I go through a house, one of the things, because I do have a construction background, so I notice a lot of things, but even if you don't have that, if you're told what to look for, you can too, see the same things that we see. So one of the things that I noticed, a lot of the times with MDF, that's what's used to make all the trim work around our windowsills, doors, etc. There at the bottom of it, about maybe this high, 6 inches, it was all swollen out, right? So that indicates that the door is leaking. And these doors were both on the second floor. And so I went downstairs underneath of those doors and I started looking at the ceiling, and I could see little water stains. So obviously the door is leaking into the house. How long has it been leaking? We don't know. However, while I saw that, and then I went and I looked for any other signs that maybe there was something wrong, and I did find something, we actually wrote it right into our offer that we acknowledged that, you know, these doors were leaking and that there could be further water damage, et cetera, but we were not doing our inspection to renegotiate the contract. We were doing it for our own due diligence. And we were not the most expensive bid, but we were the winner in the end, because the seller took so much comfort in the fact that we were not going to come back and renegotiate this contract, that we've already taken about $10,000 to $15,000 worth of stuff that was in there, because there was other items as well, and said that we're going to take it on. We're not going to renegotiate. But anybody else going in there, we don't know. They didn't talk about it to the agent. They didn't express that this was a problem with the property. They didn't write it in their offer. So now their offer has a question. Are they going to be okay with the inspection? So that's why we were chosen. So there's more to just not having to, you know, have a buyer spend the money on inspection. It can be used now as an opportunity to win.
Hey, Kelly, on that note, if you knew that it was leaking and all of that, and you went ahead and had the inspection, you still have the opportunity to walk away, though, if the inspection says, oh, there's just so much here that we're not going to.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
I didn't waive inspection. I wrote
Right.
in there that the purposes of the inspection was not to renegotiate the contract. It was for our due diligence.
Right.
So we still,
But still giving your buyer the opportunity to go, oh my God, no, I can't do this.
absolutely.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, good. Yeah. Cool.
Yeah.
So that's my little, you know, interesting story of how, you know, looking, you know, into the corners and et cetera, and paying attention to the house for things that are, you know, visibly present on the exterior. Like I could see the bulging in the trim, right? Like, so obviously there's an issue. So that's the things that we should be looking for, is small items like that. And, you know, ages of oil tanks, right? You know,
Yeah.
we know 10 years outside, you know, 15 to 20 on the inside, depending on the insurance company. There's a plate sticker right on there. There's no excuse to not know that should have to be changed.
Yeah.
And they're not inexpensive items anymore. They're around $2,800 to get an oil tank replaced with the new codes.
Just to follow up that conversation, it's funny you should mention the MDF. I recently had a building inspection, and it was on a fairly new home, and the inspector said why they ever would use MDF on the exterior, and it wasn't exterior, yes, and they noted it in the building inspection. And I knew the building, I knew the gentleman who built the house, and I contacted him. And he said, it's not. It looks like MDF, and it's not. And it's a new product. I had to Google it and everything just to actually, and what it's called, it's a door surround kip molding. It looks a lot like MDF. So a lot of building inspectors were picking it up as if it was an MDF product, and saying it's going to create moisture and it's just going to basically deteriorate because it is on the exterior. However, when this came up on my building inspection, I wanted to further investigate it. And sure enough, through Home Depot, it's a new product out. It does look like MDF, and it's actually for the surround door kits. It's actually, I could probably Google it back and just give you guys a heads up, but it's at, it's called, it's an architectural grade in combination for moldings for exteriors. So just in case you notice it on any of your new builds, and if a building inspector categorizes it as an MDF on the exterior, it looks like it, but it's durable and it's acceptable to building code and so on and so forth, and it's not. And it could have crashed this deal if I didn't look into it a little further. Just a heads up to follow up your conversation there, Kelly.
Yeah, no, that's actually very interesting.
Have we heard of that? Anybody?
Never, no.
I can post it on, I have it actually in front of me. I'm just not that computer savvy to actually share it with everybody quite yet. I can forward it to Aaron, maybe.
Okay.
Give
Or
you.
Cheryl,
Yeah.
Cheryl, would you mind sharing it on the closed Facebook group?
Yeah, I can do that.
Right, because that would be a really good way for people, if it's something that you're able to share, that this came up in my inspection and it might be, it's a new product, just that everybody could be aware of it.
Absolutely, because it really threw a trigger into my deal, because, and if I didn't actually ask the owner, and if I didn't follow it up, it could have been a real, I'm like, what is this build? It could have ruined his reputation. It could have did a lot of things. I'm glad I caught it when I did and looked it up a little further, and then I have a screenshot of it and so on and so forth. So I'll definitely post that just to be aware for sure.
Okay, yeah, it looks like a polystyrene or something core combined. Okay, interesting. Sorry, I just Googled it when you're.
Yeah, perfect.
Um,
I don't know if anybody had any problems with electrical, but I know a few of the building inspectors around here were actually going a little further, although instead of recommending an inspector, they're going a little further, and they're actually taking the plate off, and they're just seeing exactly how they're wired through and so on and so forth, which almost every one of my inspections lately have wiring issues. So through
double tap.
Before, I don't know if it's what? You
double
too?
Taps? All these do-it-yourselfers adding their basements. They do. They double tap.
No, it's
needs going into the panels. I see it all the time.
Oh, it's causing a bit of a headache for me, because I'm getting electricians in, and electricians don't work for free. So they go back in, and like, you know, with all these older homes around here, they're coming in and they're saying, like, you know, well, there's wiring issues, and we have it, but the electricians are looking at it saying it's perfectly fine. It's a red flag to my inspectors, but it seems to be coming up perfectly fine for inspectors. So if you get something on there, you might, regarding the building inspection, you might want to get a building inspector in there to actually, or not a building inspector, rather, an electrician in there, just to verify that it is definitely an electric issue, as opposed to just somebody red flagging it just in case. There's just a couple things that I've been experiencing lately.
Thank you, Cheryl.
So, you know, another thing too with electrical, you know, these are things that we can visibly see, right? You know, we know the round things, we know their fuses. You know, the ones that you click back and forth.
Oh yeah,
they're breakers, right? Now people get all like, you know, I always say their panties in a bunch when it comes to fuses. And a lot of the time with fuses, it's just a lack of understanding. The old wiring was problematic was the 60 amp services, and those become problematic with insurance because they, you know, don't want to insure a property with 60 amps. So in those cases there, you would upgrade the panel. Obviously you're going to need a line truck. You're going to have to bring things up to code, and it is an expensive thing. It's anywhere between $3,500 and $4,500 depending on the style of house when you're doing a 200 amp service. There's a big breaker at the very top of the panel, the very bottom of the panel, and that typically has a number on it. And so you can find out if it's 60 amp or 100 amp. The numbers are there. There's no reason that we should be really wondering these things. So if it's a 100 amp service, I know most electricians probably do this too. My brother, he's a Red Seal electrician. He has a company. He goes in and he does cash jobs for the 100 amp services. And for $1,000, he can switch out the hardware. If it's already a 200 amp service with fuse panel, because some of the hardware's different ratings, etc., he can do those ones for around $1,500. So people shouldn't be panicked by them. But if it's a 100 amp or a 200 amp service, what I always tell my people is like, look, there's nothing wrong with fuses. The only thing that you need to have is some backup fuses should you blow a fuse. They even now make some fuses that are resettable. They have a little click thing in them. So you know, they can have a little bit of the convenience of the breakers without actually having to go through that. But at the end of the day, if it's 100 amps plus, it's $1,000 to $1,500 upgrade. So you can kind of hold the people back because they see it and they're like, oh God, it's going to cost me $5,000, because everything that a buyer sees comes with a $5,000 bill. Right? It just does. It costs you $500, but it costs $5,000.
Yeah.
So we have to be very careful with that. So that's another thing to look for as well. I find that really important with electrical. And I can say that 75% of the time when people see that panel, they go, right? And it's typically not a big deal.
Yeah. No, it's a good point, Kelly. Chad or Wayne, which one of you guys would like to go next?
I would just chime in there about the electrical too. When you take
Sure.
the pan, if you take the cover off, especially homes built in the 70s, I always take a look, see if there's any aluminum wiring in there.
Yes.
That's quite the nightmare, you know.
Yeah.
It's few deals on it, but it's the easiest thing to look at. If it's silver, it's aluminum.
Yeah, 100%. And can I add to that too? Sorry, electrical, I'm an electrician's daughter. So with those, the cure to that, so just because there's aluminum wiring in the house doesn't mean, oh crap, we got to open up all the walls and rewire the whole house. It's not knob and tube, right? So the problem with aluminum wiring is that you have aluminum and copper together. So you've got two dissimilar metals that have different expansion points with heat. So obviously with electricity, we are generating heat through that. So basically what ends up happening is you've got two things that are expanding and contracting at different temperatures. So it can create a looseness in the joints, which then can create an arc, which then becomes problematic with potential fire. So the fix to that is what they call pigtailing. So they come in and they take like a piece of copper wire, and then they put it with the aluminum wire. They have this special goop that's conductive, and then they have a special moret that is approved. And they put that all together. That stops the expansion, contraction, and if it does, it's conductive, whatever this goop stuff is. And then they put it all back in together, and now you've got a copper at your plugs, your switches, your lights, everywheres. And typically that's anywhere between $800 and $1,500. Again, size of the house matters, right? If we only got one bungalow, something like that, it's going to be into the lower number, right? So again, they're not things that people need to go, oh, I can't do it, but they're things that you need to have an idea of what the cost is, right?
Good point.
Chad?
Yes, morning.
What do you find? What are some of the top things for you when you go in?
There's a variety of everything, because if you don't focus on a specific marketplace, there's so many diverse things that you'll run into. And I think one of the important things to really note is everybody's in a hurry to get through a transaction. And I think it's our job to slow down the momentum of the transaction and the process. And I know there's a lot of heat on the buying side of things these days, but you know, when you rush in, I guess fools rush in and they make mistakes, and there's a lot of things that get unearthed, and some transactions can be, terminations can be avoided. And I think when I teach Ignite Module 11, one of the most important things that I emphasize during that module is setting expectations. So before you book the inspection to go into this particular property, whatever it is, I mean, do a thorough job of understanding age. I think that's a big thing when you're dealing with different, you know, you could be in the west end, south end of Halifax, downtown Dartmouth area. You could be out in Kingswood, you know. Every house comes with different building materials and the way they put it together. So understanding the age will define some of the characteristics that that particular home will exhibit, okay? So if you set the expectation when you're shopping around with a buyer, and you're shopping around houses that were the baby boomer era, in the 1960s and 70s, there are characteristics of a home that you can expect to see. Right? Wayne brought up the aluminum wiring thing, and Kelly expanded on that. Why is that important to know about a house that was built in the 1970s, right? Because you are going to run into some electrical issues with that. You know, houses that were built in the 1940s, 50s, and 60s with, again, going back to electrical. But then also going into things like asbestos. At what age would you expect to find asbestos in a home? Right? So that just comes with experience. So if we're shopping around particular age of homes, having the experience of knowing what types of things to find in that specific vintage of home, you know, would you expect to find asbestos in a home built in the 1930s and 40s? Well, of course you would, because they often wrap their boilers and their pipes with asbestos. And then later on in the 1960s, they had a lot of asbestos in the plaster work, right? So those are the types of things that I look at when it comes to the age of a home. You know, within 15 to 18 to 20 years, when comes to plumbing, what's everybody looking for in that house? Everybody wants high-tech plumbing, absolutely. So you have to know, you know, what did they use in terms of product? And I can't remember. Sorry, one of the folks that are on today, we're talking about the exterior door trim kits, and yes, that's a poor product. It really is. I've seen it in so many houses. A lot of homeowners are peeling those off the houses and replacing them with a vinyl product. And there's a place over in Dartmouth that I actually bought a whole kit for an entire house. My stepson Jonathan sold his place, and we had to, under condition of the sale, replace all of the trim around all of the windows and doors. So these are the things that different products come out at different times, and you have to be very familiar at setting that expectation with your buyer. You're going to run into wiring issues, different windows. You know, if you go into a house that was built in the 1950s and 60s, a lot of times there's still wooden windows. What to expect there. Plumbing issues, not just high-tech, but cast iron. You know, a lot of times insurers don't like to see cast iron because people are adapting rubber adapters to cast iron. Cast iron rusts from the inside out. So you see a lot of houses that are painted with cast iron on the outside. It's not going to do you any good because it's going to oxidize from the inside out. So that's one of the things that that I do before you know, making an offer into a certain marketplace. Talk about what we would expect to find in houses of that age. Okay. Property.
Chad, I think you should have something written up. As a new agent, I would love to know houses that are 100 years old. Here's what to look for. Houses that are 50 years old. Here's what to. That would be so awesome.
That'd actually be a great thing. We should
That
do
would
that.
be.
Great idea, Chad. We just made a make work project for you.
Oh, yeah, I'm not busy enough. Absolutely. I'm not later today. The other thing is the revision of the reviewing the property disclosure statement before you go into the inspection, because that will also tell you a little bit of the history of the home before the inspector goes in and finds things, or it could get you to key in specifically on those things. All right, so that's setting the expectation before going into an inspection. Okay, so things, when I arrive at a house beyond that, things that I look at is grade. I pull up, if anybody does any business in Sackville, you'll know why Sackville trenching is a very thriving business out there, right? Because Sackville, you're basically between Glendale Drive and Sackville Drive, you're living on a hill, and it's a slope, and that's the one thing that you're going to encounter. So when I pull up to a house, I automatically look at the slope. All right. If there's going to be, take a walk around the outside. If there's a crack in the foundation, you walk inside, you get a musty smell. There's a good chance you're getting water in the basement, right? And then you can look for signs in the basement, staining on the concrete, staining on the drywall. Like Kelly had mentioned, if you look at the ceilings and the walls, you start seeing watermarks. Yeah, there's some red flags there. So that's one of the things that I look for when I pull up to the house. Deferred maintenance or neglect, you know, things that stand out that are very obvious that a homeowner should be doing. That just bells and whistles are going off like crazy. When I pull up to a house and something as easy as painting the fascia board or the trim on the windows, and that's being neglected, what more are you going to find throughout that house, right? Thanks to you, there's a lot of do-it-yourselfer stuff going on. So if you start seeing a lot of do-it-yourselfer projects, I'm going to go back to what Kelly said earlier. I'm afraid, I don't care if a guy's going to do his own trim or his own flooring and he botches it and it doesn't look good. But what I'm more concerned about is what Kelly is brought up earlier, is all of the things that they should be getting a qualified person in to do that they do it themselves. One of the things that scares me the most about, and I don't touch it personally, I am a do-it-yourselfer. I enjoy doing projects and the challenge of getting it right. But one thing I don't touch is electrical, right? I'm not putting my family in jeopardy, right? By doing it wrong, causing a house fire while everybody's tucked in at night, not something I'm willing to do. So that's one thing that when I go into a house, I look for those types of things. It's a scary situation when you see a guy trying to fool with his own electrical work. So.
Can I ask you all a couple of questions? When you walk in a house with a client and you see things that are obvious, do you pipe right up and say something right away, or do you keep it to yourself and wait to see what the client has to say about the house?
Right.
I personally do it as I'm walking through. You know, like I'll point out nice things too, so that it's not like, oh, I'm tearing the house all apart, right?
Yeah.
You know, as I'm walking through, I'm like, oh yeah, no, this is really nice. Oh, look, actually, this is, you know, and then keep walking around, and I still point out the nice little things, especially the stuff that I see that, you know, matches their desires.
Yeah.
But I'm still making sure that as I'm going through, I'm pointing these things out. And you know, I've had even the one with Brenda that we did, like, the guy said to me, he's like, wow, he's like, you pointed out things that I wouldn't have even thought to look for. And I said, well, that's my job. Right? And, you know,
Do that before you find out how much interest they have in the home?
I just do it as I'm going through, because I'm educating my buyer. We're going to go look at multiple homes. So this may not be the one, but now I've noticed this one thing, and now I've taught you that this is something that we should look for. And maybe in the next house, you'll pick it up yourself. Right. Mm-hmm. So I'm more of a guided tour and education experience.
And Kelly and Lynette, I do the exact same thing. I'm an open book. When I see stuff that's great, I point it out, and I also disclose any relevant facts about the house that I know, or anything that I point out that I see that from my experience, I always point it out. I just figured it's better to give a heads up. They can go in at a knowledgeable. They decide to offer on it. They're aware of these things. They're not hidden things that are going to come up on the inspection. Go in with your price point, knowing what we just experienced and what we just saw.
Yeah,
I do the same thing.
You point out the things, but then tell them a possible solution at the same time.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So,
Yes.
Exactly.
like, let's say I was going through and I saw wood windows in a house, right? But I can see that there's 2 panes of glass in there, so I know it's a thermal window, so I know it's okay, right? And on the exterior of the house, it looks like they've been painting and doing everything that they should do, right? So I would say to them, like, okay, you know, one of the things that this house has is it has wood windows. Now, wood windows aren't a bad thing, so don't panic. But here's the thing: there are maintenance. They come with a maintenance schedule. So you're going to be scraping and painting every 1 to 2 years, so that you can keep them the water out of them.
Yeah.
You know, if I see like a fogged off panel and it is a wood window, I'll just say, okay, you know what? You can just replace the thermal panes, but that's probably going to run you around $300-400. So if you're paying $300-400 for this and a new window, and the install is probably going to cost you around $1,000, well, then it makes sense for this particular window to bank on replacing it in the future, right? But as long as a wood window is not leaking physically, water coming in, you know, you continue to paint it. You have a maintenance schedule. You have a perfectly good window. It is no like worse efficiency, etc., than a vinyl window, but people are going to have maintenance, and they should look at, okay, you know, we are probably going to have to start replacing these, and maybe you do 1 or 2 windows a year, maybe you do the front face, and then you do the back face another year, but you just kind of set that expectation of, you know, you will be doing something with them, whether it's maintenance or replacement, but as long as they're not leaking, it's not a problem. So now they've had the expectation set. When the inspection happens and they find out 2 windows are leaking, they're not going, oh my God, I don't want to do it. It's like, oh, okay. Yeah, Kelly mentioned that there could be about $1,000 per window that we have to consider, right?
I find when I'm telling people possible solutions, they're like a squirrel, because they're kind of listening, but they kind of want to see the rest of the house. And I feel like they're not taking in all my info. So I wait till the end, and maybe I shouldn't be doing that. But yeah, I just find they're too interested in seeing, and we only have 15 minutes. And so we're going into a house and we only have so much time to see everything. And they want to see every room and see what's there. And so when we come out, I'll say, here are the things that I noticed about the house that you may not have noticed, or whatever. Yeah.
That would be more of the
if it was really big, I would point it out as we were walking.
Yeah, I just look at some of the showstoppers personally. If they're big issues, you know, we'll pause, we'll have a look. You know, I don't want to scare anybody away from buying a perfectly good house if it's just a bunch of small things that can be, you know, $10 fixes, right? But when it comes to some of the bigger things, you know, if you know a wood stove obviously doesn't meet the clearances, or doesn't have the heat shields, or it's not connected properly, again, one of my fears about the do-it-yourselfer. I don't like burning devices, right? You know, people putting in their own wood stoves. The importance of reviewing the disclosure statement before going into the negotiations or an inspection. You know, did you put in your own wood stove, or did somebody qualified come in to do that, right? You know, there's some great people out there, very detail-oriented people out there, and they know how to do things, and they'll do it properly. But there's a lot of people that think they know what they're doing and do their own work, and those are the ones that scare me the most. But
Yes.
yeah, going through a house, you can get a sense. I mean, some things are very obvious, and I wouldn't go through the house pointing out this flaw, that flaw, and the other flaw.
Yeah.
I know, and I agree to a certain degree. If I know, to expand a little bit on what Kelly was saying, is you have a sense of what your buyer is looking for. And when you absolutely know, when you pull up to the curb and the first thing that they say is, ooh, I just don't like this property. Let's go in and look at it anyway, because this is going to be part of our education.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a great way to approach it, Chad. What about you, Wayne? What do you find?
Well, I always search around, check the chimney too outside. Check for cracking, splitting, the caps on there, the bricks aren't falling out. Because, you know, you come up with that quite a bit of the inspections. They want liner caps, they want, you know, a bunch of different things. Outdoor oil tanks, I don't know, over in Nova Scotia, but Prince Edward Island, they're pretty much non-existent anymore.
Really?
Unless they're fiberglass. Steel outside, you can't get insurance on them.
Really?
They won't allow. So if you have
all.
an outdoor steel tank, you're not going to get insurance.
Wow.
Strange. You know, like, because like Allstate here and Allstate and PEI, it's the same bloody company, right? It's strange.
Over here, we'll touch outside steel tanks.
Weird.
Wow.
I wonder, is that the direction the insurance companies are going? Or I see a lot of changes with the insurance companies, with the oil tanks, up to date. Are you guys ahead, or are you a little bit behind?
And we have on our clauses, if the purchaser's insurance company deems the tank uninsurable, the vendor has to replace it at the vendor's expense.
Oh, they have to.
It's correct, yeah. But they have to get the insurance company to write a letter stating that the tank is not insurable.
Oh.
PEI Mutual, one of our biggest companies, they won't give anyone that letter if they haven't currently insured. They don't want to piss off the seller.
Yeah.
They'll give a year to replace it, but every other company, they won't. They'll pretty much give you a letter if they don't like the tank. And then I tell my clients, especially if you see the thickness of the tank. 2 mils are the problems we had over here. The 2.3 aren't as bad, but the 2s were rusting out from the inside. PEI Mutual was the only company that would touch them. Co-op, the other companies over here, Peak and McGinnis, Cook, they won't touch the 2 mil tanks, period. So a lot of times I tell my clients, go call Peak and McGinnis, you're going to get a free tank out of this whole thing. You're pretty much covered, and they're all happy about it. You know, they know they're not going to have to be stuck with another bill in a couple of years to replace the tank.
Sure. Yeah.
But our provincial regulations are changing over here all the time of what they will and won't allow.
I find, Wayne, we're all over the board with it. Some companies are accepting the, well, definitely not the 2.0, but the 2.5, I believe it is. I think they're accepting them for the exterior. And co-operators are actually extending the life of them to 15 years outside, where it has always been the 10 around here. But I find it seems to be changing all the time. I like to have, like, you know, a set of guidelines acceptable. Boom, this is what's allowed and what's not. It seems like they want them indoors at some point in time, and then they want them outdoors, and next thing you know, it's like they're allowing the 15, but there's no common denominator saying that this is what is actually acceptable in Nova Scotia.
I tell my sellers right away, as soon as I'm looking at the house, it's not fiberglass, is that expect to have to change it.
Yeah.
If you don't, bonus, but expect to have to spend about, you know, $2,800 to $3,000.
And that's a clear definition that you can actually provide your clients, because you actually know the expectations. You know they will not cover anything other than a fiberglass side. But around here, it's so up in the air, and different insurance companies are allowing it. Others aren't. But I think they have a lot of pressure from the environmental on them. So I think that poses a bit of an issue with the insurance companies. I ran into that a couple of times, and they wanted even indoor ones changed at 10 years. But I also seen them extend them to 15 recently. On the exterior. So I wish there was a clear definition on what is acceptable standards for all insurance companies. It depends on
like an industry standard, not an actual just per company and per policy. Yep.
Thank you.
So with oil too, because the cost of the oil tank is so expensive now, you know, one of the things I personally am doing myself, I have a tank that's going to need to be replaced in 4 years. I know that, right? I will wait until the insurance company physically calls me and tells me to do it, but I know in 4 years I'm planning on it. I'm not the new code for today, and the new code is now top feed because it used to feed from the bottom, and the whole reasoning why they did that is obviously if your fuel line gets nicked, your whole oil tank can't empty onto your property, right? But as a result of it, there's a pump and other things. It was $2,800 to $3,000 to change an oil tank right now.
Holy shit.
Yeah, that's a lot of money.
Sorry.
Yeah.
A new boiler with all the plumbing and everything else that's going to be said and done is about $6,000. So my house right now is 16 years old, 17, something like that. So in 4 years, when I get this phone call, my boiler is going to be 21 years old. Well, it seems like a great time to switch everything over to propane. So I can regain the real estate inside of my house because I'm just going to get a box on the wall. But the other thing is that your insurance goes down because you're no longer storing oil on the property, right? Yeah. So it's actually about $100 a month, or $100 a year, sorry, that it's saving you by switching over. And then of course there's efficiencies and all other stuff. It's going to cost me about $12,000 to do it. So I'm $9,000 of the expenses already there, right? Because I'm going to have a boiler, 21, it's virtually at the end of its life.
Yeah.
And I'm going to have an oil tank. These two things, $9,000, 12 for me to switch it over, right? So there's things like that that's good to know as well, because when I'm walking through a house, that's another thing that I'm looking for is the age of the furnaces and things like that, because you know that if it's a forced air furnace, you know, you're again around $5,000, the boiler's around $6,000. But the other thing is when you know the heating systems that are in the house, you can also talk to your folks about other alternatives that are coming up. I love seeing forced air, and I love seeing a 25-plus-year-old furnace, because I'm like, guess what you can do? Fully ducted heat pump, right? So, you know, then you're getting rid of the oil tank, you're saving the money on the insurance, and you're getting heating and cooling, and it's more efficient, right? So it's a win-win the whole way around, right? So these are things as well that I'm educating my clients on. And then I'm also talking to them as well, like you have your hot water baseboards, people, you know, that want to put in heat pumps. With hot water baseboards, you have zones in the house. So usually your bedrooms are on one zone, your main living space is on another zone, and your basement is on another zone. That's typical, right? If people paid a lot of extra money, you know, well, not a lot of extra, but, you know, maybe $500 on the whole job, they could actually have rooms broken down and on their own thermostats. The reason that's important is anybody with hot water baseboard heat that wants to get a heat pump in, they need to understand that that heat pump, it'll be working in that main area. It might be going down and it might be starting to hit those bedrooms, but those bedrooms aren't equally getting it. And so the thermostat is in the hallway to turn on those 3 bedrooms. Well, those bedrooms may not get the heat, or you're going to have to turn the heat up higher, but now those bedrooms aren't getting the benefit of that. So hot water baseboard heat is actually one of the worst ones that I see if you're looking for efficiency options. To me, it's the most comfortable, cozy heat because it heats up your walls, everything radiates, and it's a lot warmer, right? But with electric heat, which people are usually squawking about because they have something against electric heat, usually because they just don't understand. I always explain to them, I see bills for either or all the time, and they're within a couple $100 of each other. But a house with electric heat, what I like about those with those ductless heat pump options that are out there, is that at least those rooms that are maybe getting 10 or 12 degrees of heat from that heat pump, well, now that thermostat that's in each and every room is only having to make up that, you know, 6 to 8 degrees difference that somebody needs, you know, in order to have heat in that room. So to me, it's really important to understand as well the different heating systems and the different alternatives that people can have to be more efficient or more comfortable just in general for cooling, right?
Okay, Kelly, you're on for getting that out to us. That was very good. I won't remember it, but that was really good. I want to ask you guys a question about wooden foundations. Anybody sell a house with a wooden foundation?
I have clients that have one right now in Truro. They bought a house from me down here, and they're still trying to sell their Truro house. and they've got a wood foundation. It was the first time I ever heard of it. So what do you know about them, Holly?
Well,
I think I looked at that house. I looked at that house in Truro and I'm like, what the hell, a wood foundation?
Oh, yeah, and that's what's causing the problem. Everybody's
Yeah.
scared of this wood foundation.
So I had clients that offered on this place in Clayton Park. And anyway, when we walked into, so next time I will always now look at the foundation, which before is not something that I scanned on the cut sheet to go, oh. Anyway, so we walk into the place and they have this information on this wood foundation. So I looked right quick and I went, shit, this has got a wood foundation. Anyway, so all the information, and they really liked the house. They decided they would get an engineer in to see if he could establish the condition of the wood foundation. And they did the research, they Googled and whatever. So the engineer came. He couldn't access it because it's underneath. There's nowhere to see it. And it's like, holy mackerel, like you can't do an inspection. Well, in this house you couldn't anyway, on a wood foundation. So then they still liked it. We still offered. We thought, well, anyway, 3 insurance companies, nope, not insuring you, wood foundation, no.
What?
And even the mortgage company was a little iffy. Wood foundation, but the actually it was going to be a higher rate, which I thought was crazy. But anyway,
and it was a slab, right? Like a 1 level, like no basement, right?
Well, it kind of, it was, it did have like a downstairs, yeah.
Really?
Yeah. It's, I know, it's weird. And so, because underneath the deck, the deck was up, on the 2nd level. And, well, actually it would be the main level when you walked in. But yes, you definitely went downstairs and there was a walkout. So we were trying to figure out if there was some place that we could see this wood foundation, and you just couldn't. So anyway, we walked away from it. Pardon me?
Was the basement finished?
Yeah. Yep.
Okay. Yeah, the one that I'm talking about in Truro, it's like a slab type option. Yeah.
It was a what, sorry?
Slab type option.
Yeah.
There's
It's
wood foundations in the Basin View area.
yes. Well, in the Basin View area there are? Oh, shit, really? Like on Basin View, that's where we're looking next. Oh,
real honesty there, Holly.
There's a whole street in there that has wood foundations.
Yeah.
I saw one a number of years ago in Lawrencetown, and I phoned up the Engineer Society, and luckily they turned me on to Michael O'Connor, who's an engineer, and he used to teach a course at the Technical University on wood foundations. He's still in Halifax working. So he produced a report, come out and inspected the house. And interesting enough, they're supposed to build on a certain grade so that water runs away from the foundation.
Yes.
And there has to be an access to the foundation as well.
Yeah, and in this house, there was no access to the foundation, none. He was there for 45 minutes trying to find somehow, somewhere. I mean, he found like 3 inches, not even, like underneath, it was just crazy. So anyway.
So
it's built with a pressure treated wood, but even pressure treated wood is not supposed to be submerged in water. It's impervious to water running by it. And that's why
no foundation should be submerged with water ever, right? Because if it's properly drained,
well, that's what we're hoping.
Yeah, because it's the whole thing.
Okay, so tell me about Basin View again. Where in Basin View? Are you saying Basin View Drive or all the offshoot streets of Basin View with the wood?
There's just some of the houses up there. It was
like Laurentide and all of those places, Old Clayton Park?
No, Old Basin View, like up.
Oh, Bedford.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You've been in the building industry for quite a long time. What do you know about wood foundations?
Who are you talking to?
Thad.
Oh.
Me?
Yeah.
I know. We're all waiting for somebody to answer.
Sorry, somebody's breaking up. Okay, I think you're asking me. So I've dealt with wood foundations in the past, of course, not new construction because that's wood foundations is a very taboo topic.
Yeah.
In my experience, they're very difficult, the exact same style, size, and features. One has a wood foundation, one has a traditional concrete foundation. The one with the wood foundation will be problematic to sell. It's just the way it is.
Yeah.
People don't have the information, and I bet you 95% of the real estate members don't know about wood foundations and their characteristics. I sold one on Ellen Crescent, number 38 Ellen Crescent, in probably 1999 or 2000. And that had a wood foundation, and I sold that property 7 times.
Where's that? Where, geographically speaking, where was it?
If you go up Bayview Drive off Prospect Road by the
Many Bayview drives, Jesus.
Oh.
So this is Bayview, not Basin View. So Bayview Drive to Ellen Crescent, right to the very top.
Right, I know where you mean.
This is number 38. So again, looking at the grade, it was a fairly level lot, which is not good because if it doesn't have a nice sloping lot, it doesn't have proper drainage. That wasn't the issue. There was a lot of settlement around the foundation, and they're a very technical system to put together, and there are very few people qualified to put these together. Now, if you guys, to expand on what Mike was saying, there's Marwood, which is the biggest supplier and manufacturer of pressure treated wood and preserved wood. Now, this is the difference. This is not exactly pressure treated. This is preserved wood that they use for these foundation systems.
Yeah,
So there is a
PFW, I think they call it.
Sorry?
PFW, I think is what they call it.
Right. So that's a specific technique, and it involves different chemicals. So what's unfortunate is if you deal with those on the East Coast, it's the wrong region and the wrong climate for these anyway. They brought these foundation systems in thinking it was a good thing. Now, there are some positive things about it. It's like an ICF foundation. If you guys are familiar with a ICF foundation is,
Yeah.
They're injected with insulation. So the R value of a foundation, wood foundation, is superior to anything besides an ICF foundation. So you definitely, where you get your cold radiating through concrete foundation, you will not get that with a preserved wood foundation. But those particular foundation systems, when you look at the history of it, they were designed to be built and used in the tundra in northern Alberta, Saskatchewan, Alaska, the territories. That's where those systems were originated, and they brought the idea here to the East Coast. But you know, this is not the climate to use those types of systems, and because we have freeze-thaw cycles, it's just not an effective system. So yes, you still have systems that are impermeable at this point. They haven't been penetrated. I'm not saying it's a matter of time because they have a 50-year or lifetime guarantee on them. If they're built well and properly, and only a few people can do that, I don't see an issue with it, but I see the issue with people not accepting it because of the resale issues.
Yeah.
Now that being said, this one that I sold, part of the foundation had rotted on the exterior. And generally speaking, there's 2 walls on a wood foundation. So, and there's 18 inches in between the 2 walls. So when the outside rotted, they just pulled off the sheathing, replaced the 2x4s on the outside because the inside wall still holds up the building, and they can replace the outside wall and it's back to business again. So it's an easy and economical repair when it does happen. I remember reading in high school, so that would have been back in the mid 1970s, in the science, what was that book, Chad? Do you know, Science Almanac or whatever? Popular Science, something like that.
Oh,
anyway, they started building them in Arizona. They were designed for the desert where the ground was dry.
Right.
And then they just expanded on it. So, you know, but drainage is the key. I've got to go. Sorry. Thanks.
Yeah.
So
drainage is key.
Foundation, it's having somebody who is trained the technical side, because it is a very technical system. If it's just somebody that tried it out, you're going to have problems. You're going to have leakage that you cannot control. You might as well lift the house, tear down the foundation, and start new. Really.
I recently had an offer on a wooden foundation just a couple of weeks ago, actually. It was Mariana's, one of Leanne's listings. And we called around all insurance companies and nobody would even consider insuring it, and the building inspector strongly recommended. He even asked me prior to going, he said, can you find out what the foundation is? So asking the listing agent and poking around my place myself, I couldn't actually find out because there were spots that appeared to be concrete, but they weren't. And it was on a wooden foundation. And having said that, we were like, you know, he was out his building inspection money, and the building inspector said there's lots of rot with these, and he kind of had a red flag before he went in, but further that, it was exactly what he expected. And the insurance companies would not even, they wouldn't even, you couldn't even finish the conversation. They were saying, no way.
So did they give you an explanation on why?
They said due to rot.
Yeah, but they'll do a concrete block foundation, which, you know, all the mortar joints end up breaking out, and then they just leak through the holes in the middle, right?
It was compromising the integrity of the structure is what they told me.
Yeah, but same with the brick foundations too, right? Like that's the dumbest thing, because again, freeze thaw, keep breaking it up, making it weaker. I've seen those walls, you know, pushing in. Have you guys seen that before? Like, yeah. So, you know, it is kind of silly, because at the end of the day, they still have damp proofing on the outside of the wood. And, you know, the key to any foundation is to make sure that your footing drain is below the damn foundation. No water, no intrusion. It's just the way it is, right?
No, exactly.
Yeah,
I find they lump these things all in one, they lump everything into one category. And like you said, with the block foundations, I've seen block foundations that were perfectly fine, and it was like, no, they're not compromised at all. And I've seen other ones that were caving in. Yeah, they keep deteriorating unless there's upkeep.
Well, and you can't really upkeep unless you dig down around the outside of the house.
Oh yeah,
skin on, really, right? That's the only way to truly do it.
I have a couple of people that like to flip homes, and every time I find them one in their budget, guaranteed, especially in Fall River, they have the goddamn block foundation. And they said, I don't want anything to do with block foundation at all. I'll do any renos, but this, I'd have to lift up the house and put a whole new concrete. I can't get
So they're wrong, Lynnette. All they need to do is dig around the exterior of the house and put blue skin on and make sure that their footing drains are good, and they'll never have a water intrusion problem ever. There's nothing wrong with them, and that typically costs around $5,000 to go around like a 40 by 20 house, right? So just, I mean, the only thing is that they have, like, you know, beautiful gardens all around the exterior of their house, and that kind of sucks.
I just want to say that foundation systems up until about 3 years ago were my nemesis in the real estate industry. Absolutely the biggest deal breaker, or the preventer of sales.
Yeah.
What changed? What changed if it was up to 3 years ago?
Invasive testing for septic systems.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, me too. Oh, my God.
Absolutely.
I hate septic.
That has absolutely trumped the foundation system. It is cheaper to replace a foundation system and deal with a foundation system than it is to replace a septic now.
Oh my God. And 2020 has been the year of the failed septic. Yep. Yep.
Yeah.
So I think, you know, there's only certain signs that you can look for with a septic system. So when we talk about red flags, when we drop by a property, one, if it's a fairly level, low slope type of grade, you know that there's a likelihood, especially in an area where there's a lot of clay. Now, Wayne, you have a lot of clay in PEI, yeah?
Yeah.
Right? So when you get an area that has a lot of clay is non-porous. It'll just hold water. So if you arrive at a house that's, say, 30 to 35 years old or 40 years old, and you know it's got an original septic system, I mean, without question, you are likely to encounter a problem in the inspection for the septic system. You know, even though the seller is going to say, oh, no, I've never had a problem. You know, when they start sticking those video cameras down, they're going to find a bunch of ugly, and it's never good news, right? So that's the one thing. That's foundation systems have taken second seat now to septic systems.
Over here on the island, all they usually put in for septic, like we never had any septic inspection clauses on the contracts. until the last 5 years, 4 or 5 years now. And mostly all the septic inspections, nobody's using cameras or anything. They're just opening the tank,
Oh,
pumping it,
jeez.
and there's nothing really to be done over here with them. It's
Wayne, you and I need to get into that business together in PEI.
Yeah.
all they do is open up the tank, pump it out. Oh, they tell you it's a block tank, it's leaking, need to replace it. Or no, it's a concrete tank, everything's fine. That's usually the whole thing, the septic inspections. They don't do, there's no septic
Wow.
doing anything over here on the island.
That's
Don't
crazy.
let them start it.
Oh, exactly. If we can keep them out. Keep them out.
I beg to differ on that. I think they should be started because, yeah. How many people have you had, Wayne, that ended up having to replace the field after they moved into a house out of curiosity?
I haven't had anybody yet.
Not yet? Okay. That's luck.
But
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
luck. I would rather them go through the testing and see, yeah, 100%.
But there's probably nobody on the island that actually, do they even have video cameras? You know, or
not that I know of anybody that's doing those. And
Yeah.
like our ground really
To
is a
move
lot
to
of
PEI and get rich.
joy.
That's what Chad just said.
Or
I
sued.
know. Or sued, yeah. Anyway.
So if you arrive at a property that's fairly level, I usually take a quick walk around the backyard when, you know, we're oohing and ahhing about the landscape. I always look and smell is a big thing for me. I mentioned earlier that if I walk into a house, I'm very sensitive to smells. If I get a musty smell, I'm in the basement looking for air circulation or maybe water incursion. If I'm in the backyard and I get a pungent smell, it means maybe there's a little bit of wafting out of the septic field somewhere. If you see a dark staining area or really green grass, there might be an indication that you've got a failed septic system. For me,
Because that really green grass is really nice fertilizer.
that's right.
You know?
Absolutely.
It's like a cabbagey, almost looking, cabbagey leaf looking plant
Yeah, you need it.
that grows along
Don't
septic field because it's really moist ground, and also whatever's there just promotes this type of growth.
Yeah.
Whatever is there.
But Chad, I think you're saying that if you see really green grass in a certain area, it usually means that it could be seepage, correct?
Well, the thing is, I mean, if you've got an arid summer like we've had, and then all of a sudden you see a patch of green grass, it means it's being hydrated.
Right, and fertilized, that's what I'm saying.
Well, yeah, and it's more that it's got a source of water, and if it's in the area of the suspected septic field, then you have to look for those things. You know, if you know it's an older house and there's a good chance that the septic system has not been renewed since it was built 30 to 40 years ago. Yeah, that's one of those things, again, going back to age appropriate investigation. If you know your product, if it's 35 years old, your septic system has now reached its life expectancy, so there's a good chance that it's going to have to be replaced. But then go out and do a little bit of scouting around, because again, you negotiate a contract and then you go out and there's some evidence that you could have found during your visit to the property that you avoided and had that conversation before the inspection, right? So especially in a marketplace like this, because it's really aggravating me. I had a system fail. Sold the house, we were competing on it. It was a $430,000 house. And when Dean Walker from Atlantic Water Investigations started his hydraulic load and die test, within 10 minutes of him running the water, the effluent was just gushing out onto the back lawn. And
Wow.
I found it was an elderly couple with a younger son. And I just thought, you know what, there's no way they didn't know that this was happening. But it wasn't on the property disclosure statement, which annoyed me. So the unfortunate part was because of this marketplace, it was a take it or leave it situation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I couldn't believe that. But you know what? If he would have backed out, he already had the property inspection done, and then he did the septic system evaluation with the water flow test of the well. I mean, we're talking $1,200,
Yeah.
right? And then it was a take it or leave it situation. So if he decided, hey, I'm walking away because I'm not spending $25,000, this was a lakefront property. I'm not spending another $25,000 over and above my top dollar that I paid in a multiple offer situation, right? So it was the wrong approach from the agent. I ended up negotiating a 50-50 cost split on this system. But really, to me, if you've got a septic system that's gushing out the back, I think that should be a seller responsibility. But it seemed to be a negotiating point for us, and we ended up getting 50% of the system covered.
I had the ultimate failed septic system a couple weeks ago out in Middle Muscatawbet. First of all, the tank failed because it wasn't even going through the pipes. It was dropped down so low. So obviously there was a leak. Put the camera in, go through, all of a sudden, oh, look, sunshine and trees. There's no damn field.
No field.
Right? And I was like, what the heck am I looking at? Oh my God. Anyways, that was my first. And of course I had Rob Glant do it, and he was like, I think I might put this on my webpage. It just came right out into that. But you know what? The owners didn't know. Same scenario. The owners had no clue. But I ended up having it so the sellers paid for the entire system, only because I got a crazy low quote of, are you sitting down, $11,500 to replace the whole system.
Guys, I've had them as cheap as $8,000.
Really?
Yes.
Who? Who?
Well, see, the thing is every case is unique. Okay.
Yeah.
Size of property.
Yeah.
Dug well or drilled well. Neighboring wells, are they dug or drilled? Have to be 100 feet away from dug, 50 from drilled.
Yeah.
Then you also have to be very selective as to who you choose to do this work. So if you pick up the phone and you call somebody like Derek Hale is an installer only. So Derek does not go down, do the test pits and select a field. He just does a test pit, gives the information to the engineer designs a field.
Yeah.
Two totally different things. One costs $1,000 to be done, the other costs $2,000 to be done.
Yeah.
So if you go with somebody like McFarland's, or you go with somebody like Westside Trucking, Peter Conrad Construction, these guys here, they are what we call QP2s and installers. So they can go there, they can do the test pits, and if the ground will allow them to put in a C1, C2, C3, or a field bed, right?
Yeah.
That's things that they can choose.
Yeah.
If it allows them to do that, then it's $1,000 for the selection. If it's a C1, it's probably only going to be about $8,000. If it's a field bed, same thing, $8,000 to $10,000. If it needs a pump station, you're going to be around $11,000, right? So the pump station adds about another $1,000. So these are the things that it really matters who you call to deal with it. If you call Derek Hale, you're getting an engineer, you're getting a $25,000 system. End of story. Yeah. If you call one of these three other people, you're going to actually have somebody that can come up with a solution. So if we've got lots of room on the lot and we don't have to worry about wells and things like that or waterways, then a lot of the times there's a lot more effective solution. If you're under 20,000 square feet, plan on having to get either a peat system or I can't remember what the name of it, but anyways.
A mound?
No, that's a C3. Or it's this package treatment system. So it comes with a couple of tanks, and then that water is actually literally discharged, it can be discharged into a lake, just like
Well, this house was so old that the well was only 32 feet from the septic field.
So that was there,
well, so thank God they just had a really big flat backyard. I think that's what saved them.
No, size and soil is would have saved them, right? So the more sandy and permeable the soil is, the faster the water will percolate through it, which means that when it's going fast, they can have a C1 or an area bed. If it's not going fast, it'll be C2, where they start to build it a little bit above the ground to create the filtration area. And then the C3 is when you get those big, ugly Horkin things, right? If you ever have somebody that is in the middle of a failure and a C3 is what's being suggested, at that point, I would say, no, that's not what we want. If it's going to be a C3, we want a sloping sand filter, because a sloping sand filter, it does have a little bit of a hump, but it kind of goes down and you can landscape it in usually pretty well. But the C3s, there ain't no landscaping those in unless you got a rolling hill.
I have a C3 and mine is, you wouldn't even know.
Because you have a rolling hill and it's landscaped in, right?
Yeah, maybe. Not really.
Yeah. Well,
no, I'm just trying to think of where it is. No,
I was going to say the only way for you not to see it is that it was like, you know how we have front lawns that'll go like this?
Yeah.
Well, those are a perfect little spot to have a C3 in there, because now it looks like it's going along with it, right? You know, sometimes you have a lot that has a hill like this. Well, if you can have the C3 because it's built above ground, right? So the hill's here. Well, now we've built the C3 on top of it. Well, now we can kind of smooth that into it so you don't really see it.
All right, I'm going to go check that out. That's my job today.
So I'm just looking at the time, and
yes,
I know that we had scheduled this from 10 to 11, so I want to make sure that we're respecting everyone's time and business and commitments that they have. But so we'll take like maybe another minute or two if anybody has anything, any comments that they want to make, just to be able to wrap it up. And yeah.
I just want to say thank you for the opportunity. I think it was very helpful. Kelly, you had like a lot of good information there, and I always like learning from other agents and my experiences. So thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you, Cheryl, for participating. It's great.
On the age of the homes and what to look for. That's going to be an awesome list. But
yeah, that's going to be good. Good refresher.
No pressure, anybody.
No pressure, Chad. I'll look forward to round 3. That'll be good. All right. See everybody.
Thank you so much, everyone, for your time. We really appreciate it. We know that everybody's got busy schedules. So yeah, just thank you for the input and all the advice and suggestions, and a lot of wisdom in this room. A lot of wisdom. So thank you, guys.
Okay, see y'all.
Wonderful day, guys.
Bye.